power on the NES, and the screen fades in on a curtain rising. Mario and Luigi stand on a checkered floor, the lights come up, and the show begins. It's familiar, but sharper. The colors pop, the music bounces, and for the first time, Mario can fly. By the late 1980s, the NES was running on borrowed time. Arcades were pushing 16-bit hardware, Sega was preparing the Genesis, and Nintendo's own engineers were already deep into work on the Super Famicom. But before saying goodbye to 8-bit, Shigeru Miyamoto and his team had one last act in mind. Super Mario Bros. 3 wasn't just another sequel, it was Nintendo's encore. 2.5 years of work, dozens of designers, and a custom cartridge that pushed the NES to its limits. When it finally launched, it wasn't just a game, it was the event. A pop culture explosion that filled toy aisles, Saturday morning cartoons, and even movie screens. And in a time when everyone else was looking to the future, Super Mario Bros. 3 reminded the world just how much magic was left in 8 bits. Today, we're heading back to 1990 to relive Nintendo's greatest encore. The moment Mario took his final bow on the NES and proved that even at the end of an era, imagination could still fly. So grab your controller and take flight. It's time to revisit Super Mario Bros. 3 on today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello, and welcome to the 269th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we're diving into Super Mario Bros. 3, the 1988 classic that redefined platformers with its inventive level design, power-ups, and overworld map. Widely regarded as one of the greatest games of all time, Super Mario Bros. 3 set the gold standard for the platforming genre. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably jump into every pipe just to see where it goes. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, do you think you'd explore every corner of the map, or would you just get lost in the desert world?
Well, I probably wouldn't get lost forever, but I would spend some considerable years there.
Very, very, very true. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi. No,
Very
not a good
good.
reference. Mario and then Star Wars, we can't put them together. That's okay.
Stario Wars.
And joining us again is our returning guest, Ryan Shepard, who, if I had to guess, still remembers where every secret leaf and hidden warp whistle is tucked away. Ryan, were you the explorer type back then, or did you always just race for the flagpole?
I did whatever Nintendo Power told me to.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? That is 100% how we did it. Rob, I'll start with you. Super Mario Bros. 3, have you played through it?
I never beat it, but I definitely played through first some odd levels a few times.
So not a finish, not a beginning to end, but you're familiar with the game. Yep. With firsthand experience.
Correct.
Ryan?
In preparation for this episode, before I knew I was going to be on it, 6 months ago, I actually replayed the game start to finish.
Was it everything you remembered?
And more, actually.
It holds up well, doesn't it?
Yes, and we'll get into some of that later for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
good. Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say we have a lot to talk about, but we don't have a lot to talk about. Not to like let anyone down, but it's hard to pull information out of this time period from Nintendo. We've talked about that over and over and over. the Japanese game developers weren't exactly forthcoming with their information. They didn't do interviews, they didn't write stuff down. So, I mean, I'm not to say we don't have anything to talk about. As Ryan said, we do have plenty to talk about, but it is what it is. It'll be a lot of anecdotes, It'll be a nostalgia filled episode. How's that? I love it. Anyway, we do have plenty of history, but before we get into the history of Super Mario Brothers, Rob, why don't you tell our listeners what else happened during this week in gaming history?
All right. Kicking it off on October 19th, 1989, Epix Inc. filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the US. Once a leader in the 8-bit era with hits like Summer Games, Impossible Mission, and California Games, Epix struggled to adapt to the emerging 16-bit and handheld markets. Ironically, it had designed the Atari Lynx handheld, whose high development costs and underwhelming sales hastened the company's downfall. The bankruptcy marked the end of one of America's earliest innovators in computer gaming, a studio remembered for its technical prowess, sports simulations, and flair for personality driven design. Though its run was brief, Epix's influence endures through the developers it inspired and its pioneering contributions to both sports gaming and handheld hardware.
I played the heck out of California Games. I'm not even going to pretend I did not. It was one of my. Didn't California Games have skateboarding? Ryan, did you ever play California Games?
Uh, you know, before about 2 minutes ago, I had forgotten about California games. Uh, no joke. I was just like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so it did exist. Did it have skateboarding? I think it had skateboarding before
Yeah,
Skate or Die, is why I remember
yeah.
it.
It had like a little half pipe thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They were fun. I mean, back then we played everything, but of course they didn't have 300, releases every week type deal. I think 300's like an underestimate nowadays. So, what else we got, Rob?
Well, next on October 24th, 1994, Nintendo released Super Punch Out for the Super NES in North America. As a sequel to the classic Punch Out series, the game once again put players in the gloves of Little Mac, facing a roster of colorful, larger than life opponents in timing based boxing matches. Praise for tight controls, expressive animation, and fast paced rhythm, Super Punch Out preserved the arcade spirit of its predecessors while introducing the Super Meter, a new mechanic that allowed for devastating knockout blows. With its personality, precision, and polish, Super Punch Out became a beloved entry in the franchise, carrying forward one of Nintendo's most enduring legacies in sports and reflex driven gameplay.
I loved me some Super Punch Out. I'm not even going to pretend I didn't.
I did not.
Not for you.
It was good. However, I my experience is more with the original Punch Out on the NES. That said, it's a very good game. Big fan of Little Mac. Actually, bigger fan of Big Mac.
True.
All right, we'll let that one slide. Good joke.
A good one indeed. Speaking of good ones, on October 22nd, 1995, Berkeley Systems released You Don't Know Jack for Windows and Macintosh computers. Blending trivia, comedy, and television style presentation, this irreverent quiz game stood out for its snarky host, Cookie Masterson, and rapid fire delivery of pop culture questions. Its mix of humor and intellect made it accessible to casual players and competitive quiz lovers alike. You Don't Know Jack was a breakout hit, spawning sequels, spin offs, and live adaptations that kept its sharp wit alive across decades. The series would go on to shape the modern party game landscape and pave the way for the Jackbox Party Pack, cementing its reputation as a timeless blend of knowledge and laughter.
It's crazy to think that we've been playing You Don't Know Jack games now for 30 years. And still, 30 years later, when we decide to get together as a group, very often a Jackbox Party Pack is at the center of said get together. 30 years. 30 years. Pretty outstanding that they've been able to keep that going for 30 years.
That is very true. But they're fantastic games.
They're a lot of fun. They're great party games. We always have a lot of fun when we get together and play them. So,
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things. It's timeless.
yes, it is. Well played.
And speaking of that, on October 23rd, 2001, Grand Theft Auto 3 hit the PlayStation 2, developed by DMA Design, now Rockstar North, and published by Rockstar Games. This groundbreaking title transformed the series from a top down crime caper into a fully realized 3D open world experience. Set in the gritty living streets of Liberty City, GTA 3 gave players unprecedented freedom to explore, take missions, or simply cause mayhem at will. Its cinematic storytelling, voice acting, and dynamic city life set a new benchmark for immersion. Universally praised for its innovation and ambition, Grand Theft Auto 3 didn't just redefine its franchise, it revolutionized how players and developers alike thought about open world games. We covered this back in episode 217, so if you want to learn more, go find it.
Yeah, go find it and learn all about Grand Theft Auto's leap into 3D, the open world genre's leap into 3D, really. That was gaming's leap into 3D. That was such a defining moment for the industry as a whole that it's a very important thing that you'll want to go and check out history-wise.
Yeah, what Dave just maybe said.
Yep, that's what I did.
And last up for this week in gaming history, on October 20th, 2009, Gearbox Software and 2K Games released Borderlands for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. Set on the lawless planet Pandora, the game fused first person shooter mechanics with RPG progression, inviting players to hunt for a mythical alien vault as one of 4 unique vault hunters. With its bold, cel shaded art style, irreverent humor, and endless supply of randomly generated guns, Borderlands carved out a new space in gaming. Critics praise its cooperative gameplay and addictive loot loop, while players embrace its offbeat personality and satisfying gunplay. The success of Borderlands sparked a long running franchise and helped define the modern looter shooter genre that dominates today's gaming landscape.
Does looter shooter dominate the gaming landscape? That's a bold statement of mine.
I mean, if you really think about it, like you can consider things like Fortnite and Apex, even Tarkov in a sense is a looter shooter. You loot and you shoot. Like
I'm glad
that's
you
what you
said that
do.
because I was going to bring up Tarkov. I think even those games are.
So I think that it does. In a sense, it's obviously no COD or Battlefield in that regard for shooters, because you don't really loot in those. But I still think that those are pretty successful games in today's gaming landscape.
Have we heard of Arc Raiders yet?
Not me, no.
Ryan, have you heard of Arc Raiders yet?
I've certainly heard of it, Dave. However, have I played it? Have I, seen a whole lot of it? No.
Rob, so it's made by the game who made the people who made the finals, and it's basically
Ah,
a third person extraction shooter.
oh, neat.
So essentially, extraction shooter would be more like Tarkov. That's why it popped into my memory. And yeah, it comes out in 9 days.
Okay, that
There's
sounds interesting.
a public play test in 3 days. The 24th is a little public play test, and I think it officially comes out on the 30th. Well, if you'll recall, as the world entered the 1980s, as the video game industry entered the 1980s, Nintendo was desperate to break into the North American market, right? Their shooter at the time that they had tried to do so with, Radar Scope, failed miserably. And that left thousands of unsold cabinets collecting dust in a warehouse, right? So to salvage that failure, the president of Nintendo of America, Minoru Arakawa, pleaded with his father-in-law, who was the president of Nintendo proper, Hiroshi Yamauchi, to let them do something with the machines, to reprogram them, to repurpose them. And that decision handed a young artist named Shigeru Miyamoto his first design assignment, and within a year, by 1981, the result of that was Donkey Kong, which became an absolute international hit. And so within a year, Nintendo went from a warehouse full of unsold machines to shipping 60,000 Donkey Kong cabinets worldwide. And the hero of Donkey Kong, a little carpenter at the time named Jumpman, would soon gain a proper name, Mario, that was borrowed from the company's Seattle landlord. And by 1983, he and his brother Luigi starred in a game called Mario Brothers. It was a cooperative arcade game set in the sewers beneath Brooklyn. A few years later, in 1985, Mario jumped from arcades to living rooms in Super Mario Brothers for the Famicom and the newly launched Nintendo Entertainment System. And it's important to remember that that single game didn't just sell consoles. It it revived an entire industry that was still reeling from the video game crash of 1983. And so you kind of have to admire them and revel in the fact that in just 5 years, Nintendo had gone literally from teetering on the edge of failure to completely redefining what video games could be. But by the late 80s, the landscape was shifting again. Its major competitor, Sega, was preparing its 16-bit Sega Genesis. We were still dazzling people in the arcades with massive, colorful cabinets like Double Dragon and Afterburner, where you could literally sit in a cabinet and fly a plane and move like it was a cabinet, one of those cabinets that moved, you know. The PC world was expanding. It was exploring deeper adventures. We had King's Quest in the late 80s. We had Maniac Mansion in 90 or 91. So these were, there were things happening. Then, by all means, the NES was still king. But as we went into the late 80s, it was aging incredibly fast. And Nintendo needed something spectacular to remind everyone why it ruled the market. But even success brought new challenges. The Japanese sequel to Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, which released in 1986 for the Famicom Disk System, was designed for expert players. It was essentially a harder version of the original Super Mario Bros. It looked like the original game, but everything just hit harder. There were more precision jumps, there were more punishing enemies, and there were cruel tricks like poison mushrooms and warps that would send you backwards. It was so difficult that Nintendo decided it was just going to be too frustrating for the Western market. And so when the time came to release a new Mario rather in North America, Nintendo of America made a surprising choice. They took a different game that Miyamoto's team had also helped develop called Doki Doki Panic, and they just reskinned it with Mario characters, right? That version, which was released over here as Super Mario Bros. 2 in 1988, traded fireballs for vegetables, Goombas for Shy Guys, and Bowser for a frog-like character called Wart. Its dreamlike tone and emphasis on character abilities really made it stand out from everything else in the series. But players over here never knew the difference, right? Ryan, did you know the difference when it came out?
I didn't, and I have to say, like listening here, like it just feels so insulting. Like, what do you mean Western audiences couldn't play that game?
I know.
But I've played it, and like, yeah, I'm glad they ended up doing this.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I don't think any of us really knew that that was the case until the Lost Levels would come out, I don't know, 93, 94 when they released Super Mario All-Stars, you know? Uh,
It's it's a lot harder, and with the some of that trickery that you're talking about with poison mushrooms, it feels mean, but it's just a different type of challenge.
that's true. We didn't know the difference. And so it was more Mario, and we were fans. I was a fan. I still like Super Mario Brothers 2. I think it's unique and special in its own respect. So Nintendo was looking to capitalize off of the success of Super Mario Bros. 2 respectively in both its markets. And while this was all going on, after Super Mario Bros. 2 for real and Super Mario Bros. 2 for not real, Miyamoto and his team at Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Decision, they had kind of already turned their focus towards something entirely new. It was going to be a project that would build on both versions of Super Mario Bros. 2 and become, in their mind, the definitive 8-bit adventure. And so development on our topic today, Super Mario Bros. 3, began later that same year in, let's see, 86, roughly, after Super Mario Bros. 2, just as the disc system was shipping in Japan, right? So as Super Mario Bros. 2 came out in the United States, they were already developing Super Mario Bros. 3, just to kind of give you an idea of the timeline here. Which is probably, too, why they didn't want to use their Super Mario Bros. 2, because they were already looking ahead to something new. Why take the time to localize and have to tweak their Super Mario Bros. 2 for Western audiences when they were already in the mindset of Mario Bros. 3? That team, which became eventually almost 24 people, spent a little over 2 years crafting Super Mario Bros. 3 on a budget between about $800,000 and $1.3 million today. That's somewhere between $2 and $3.5 million, just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of what this game was. And that's pretty impressive for a late 1980s game. There aren't a lot of late 1980s games that could say they were $1 million to develop. We know in that time period, most of these games had really small teams, a dozen people, less even. I mean, way less in a lot of cases. And they did not spend this kind of money. So, for all purposes, and I mean, it goes without saying, but you should really know that the development of Super Mario 3, it was a AAA game of its own time. It was a big endeavor for the time. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Miyamoto directed the project hands-on. He, even from the beginning, his team always encouraged a free exchange of ideas, and they insisted that originality, not sheer horsepower, not just overwhelming quantity, was the key to success. He encourages developers to do something different. And compared to the original Super Mario Brothers, which was just a handful, this was a full scale production. What really began as a small, close knit team, became 24, 25, 30 people. It was the largest group that Nintendo had ever assembled for a single project. And so there were some challenges that went with that, and they had to do things by hand. And they had a dedicated map room where programmers would spend their entire days entering course data by hand, testing the level, refining the levels. Um, the scale of this project really reflected Nintendo's growing ambition at the time. This was not going to be a quick sequel. And I say that because I feel like reskinning Super Mario Bros. 2 and how quickly Super Mario Bros. 1 and 2 came out um, is more so that, right? Because Super Mario Bros. 1 was 80, I don't know, what was it? 80, 85. And then we were releasing Super Mario Bros. 2 in 86, which was just a harder version. So in a lot of ways, that was a quick turnaround, right? But
Absolutely.
there was this definite sense as they went into this that this was going to be something different. This wasn't going to be a quick flip. This was going to be a full reinvention of what a Nintendo Entertainment System game could be. All that manpower, all that time, stretched development, like I said, into 2.5 years, but the attention to detail kind of paid off in every pixel, every secret that they hit across the game's world. So early on, the team they experimented with a diagonal, almost isometric viewpoint. As they explored this concept, precise jumping specifically, proved impossible. And so they returned to the classic side view. The checkered floor on the title screen remains a relic of that early prototype. That was something that they made when they were going with an isometric viewpoint, and they kept it basically. For Miyamoto and his team, Super Mario Bros. 3 was a moment to put everything that they learned about the NES over the entire course of its lifespan into one game. The game wasn't just about breaking away from the past, it was more so about perfecting it. They built on the techniques that they pioneered before: character scaling, smooth scrolling, and clever level design. And they kind of used them to craft a game where every level felt like its own little performance. In fact, one of the design like features was that Miyamoto wanted the game to feel like a stage play, right? And so that's why when the game opens, the levels open, there's an opening curtain rise. That's why every level ends with a curtain drop, because that was his idea, that each individual level is its own little play onto itself.
That
Every
actually
world,
makes a lot of sense now.
isn't that kind of cool?
That yeah, I didn't know that was like. I guess I never thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense when you say it.
It's a
From
very
the
Miyamoto thing to
right, I mean, it
think up.
so is. From the opening curtain rise to the final bow at each level, every world plays like its own themed act, and every level is a short scene built around one clever idea. The checkerboard floors and the theatrical transitions remind you that you're stepping into Miyamoto's show for all purposes. Now, some of the features of the game, like the power up system, it started out in a sketchbook. Early drawings that they made for this game turned Mario actually into mythical creatures. One was a centaur, for instance. But realistically, only one design stuck out of all of their original sketches, and that was a simple doodle of Mario with a raccoon tail. That, of course, became the Super Leaf, and the addition of flight changed everything. And from there, they kind of just kept with the animal theme, right? Then came the frog suit, then came the Tanooki suit. Then you kind of mess around with some of the power ups that you saw in other games. So the hammer suit would be added. Each was just another tool that added to your toolkit, right? These suits weren't just costume novelty, they were giving players new ways to move and build stages that celebrated those moves. So, Ryan, I'm a pause the history there since you played it recently. How
You
cool.
forget, yeah, you forget. Of course, you imagine Mario 3, and it's like, hey, yeah, you got the raccoon, suit, like, you're flying a little bit, but and maybe you remember the frog suit, right? But then you get deeper in the game, and it's like, hey, yeah, Hammer Bros suit. Remember that? I
Isn't
sure
there a
didn't.
boot?
There, yes, Kuribo shoe, which is only in one level, right? They made this power up for one level, and then we're like, we have so much cool stuff in this game, we don't need to even revisit this. And then, in addition to that, you can take over the cloud, Lakitu's cloud, as well in a number of levels. They just, you know, this is the game where they started like, hey, let's introduce all of these cool ideas. We'll kind of dabble in them, then we're gonna move on into the next level with the next great idea.
I remember how the first thing when I think about Super Mario Bros. 3, honest to God, the first thing I think of is the warp whistle. I'm just gonna say that because the concept of a shortcut through a game to the extent that this one had, and I know the first one had the pipes, I know it was nothing new, but for some reason, going from the pipe to the warp whistle was the coolest thing ever to me. Although Super Mario 2 had weird doors, didn't it? Like with the potion type thing where you'd pop them and the door would take you someplace else. But I don't know. The warp whistle was so cool. Because can't you get to the very end with like 2 warp whistles from like the first level, like the first world of the game or something like that? It was super quick.
You can use a warp whistle to kind of go between several groups of worlds.
Yeah.
So you can get through it pretty quick if you're in a rush.
And then yeah, the leaf and flight. You could fly through level. You could skip levels with the leaf, and it was just it was.
I just did. Yes. It's like, oh, this level is
I,
a little too much. I'm going to use that pea suit power up that you occasionally get from Princess Toadstool, and yeah, just go ahead and we're just going to skip this level and call it a day.
this this was a fantastic game.
When you
I
think when I think about like the iconic looks of Mario, so many of like the common things that are used even in games nowadays originated from this game, right? Or were refined by this game. Outside of maybe Mario 1 having the flagpole, that seems to be the ending the modern games like to stick with.
mm-hmm.
Outside of that, this game introduces the Koopalings, airships, all of these,
Bowser's red hair. I don't think it existed before this.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. This is a defining game for the series. This is a defining game for video games. Period. This still is on every single list of best NES games. Like this to me is the best NES game, and a lot of people would agree with that if you Google it. Uh, I have one of my core memories of video gaming. I remember playing this with my grandmother. She was staying with us in the family room. That's where she was sleeping. That's where my video games were. And I remember one morning I handed her the controller and she played it. And yeah,
Kicked your
that's
ass.
yeah. Well, it would have been Dad's mom, and it was that's just a unique moment. I don't have many of those with her, but I distinctly remember playing this game with her, and she'd watch me play it a lot too. So, but this is a fantastic one. Speaking of the Koopalings, that same spirit of adding to the game in a way that wasn't just a let's say a costume novelty, right? Because again, the frog suits and everything, they weren't just for looks, they were giving players new ways to move. The cast, the the Koopalings, all the other characters that were around Mario, those have meaning too. The seven children, the Koopalings, all of their names, Japanese wise at least, are named after members of the programming staff. It was Miyamoto's tribute to his team for all of their hard work. Now, of course, when the game crossed over here a couple years later, Nintendo of America renamed them after rock stars and celebrities. You know, Ludwig von Koopa, which Beethoven, Roy Koopa, Roy Orbison, and so on and so forth, which really, I think, gave them more personality and some, a pop culture flavor at the time. And again, Super Mario Bros. 3 kind of finalized Bowser's design. It's the first game that gave him his fiery red mane, and that's Bowser now. Ever since then, he's had that red mane. So, meanwhile, the overworld map was designed to frame all that creativity. It gave each land its own identity, created space for secrets and mini games, and realistically let players chart their own path through the game. Under the hood, the Nintendo was performing minor miracles. There were extended levels, there were larger sprites than normal, there were pseudo 3D effects. These all made the Mushroom Kingdom feel alive. Even the enemies of the game carried personal history. The barking tethered chain chomp introduced in this game came from Miyamoto's childhood memory of a dog that lunged at him before being yanked back by its chain. Um, I guess the point is there is a lot of this team in this game, and as Ryan put it, there is a lot of what this game gave to the Mario series and gaming culture in general for a long time. For a long time, this is an incredibly important game. Um, those little touches, the Koopalings names, the chain chomp, these are small bits of life that really give the fantasy, the world building, its warmth. Um, the soundtrack was handed off to the guy who had kept doing the soundtrack, Koji Kondo. He handled the soundtrack alone. Uh, Said in later interviews that it was his toughest challenge yet. After hearing people describe the first game's score as Latin or fusion, he really wasn't sure how to follow it up. And so he drafted multiple themes before settling on one that really matched what he considered to be the athletic rhythm of this game. And of course, by this point, the technology had progressed, and so there was more cartridge memory available. So he was able to add more fuller music. There was richer percussion, there were fuller harmonies. It really gave a Mario game this kind of bold, confident sound that had never been found in any Mario game prior to this. And all of this together really pushed the game in its entirety. Super Mario Bros. 3 really pushed the Nintendo harder than any game before it. Its cartridge had to use the MMC3, the most advanced mapper chip that Nintendo had available, which was really a custom piece of hardware that extended what the console could do. It could handle smooth diagonal scrolling, animated background tiles, and mid-screen splits, which left the top half of the screen scroll freely, while the bottom had that static status bar. Something else that we take for granted before this game, you know?
That's fair.
The MMC added extra banks of memory to store the game's huge variety of enemies and tiles and maps. Every trick in Mario 3, from the airships gliding across the horizon to the layered background and fluid movement, relied on that MMC chip working overtime. By the time development wrapped, Miyamoto and his team had used nearly every ounce of processing power the NES could offer, which really proved that there was still magic left in only 8 bits, right?
Yeah.
They got a lot out.
While the team polished up the game, Nintendo's global demand exploded because as we're going through this, the NES becomes a big deal on North American shelves, so everything just exploded. Factory lines in Japan had to work nonstop. Exports to North America soared, and the NES dominated North American shelves. As they were getting ready to release this to the world, their audience, in all honesty, had never been larger or more eager. They were ready to play more Mario. You know, Rob, what I love about Super Mario Bros. 3 is how it made something so complex look effortless. Behind the scenes, it was pure technical wizardry, but for players, it just felt smooth. Kind of reminds me of how easy it is today to make a professional podcast.
You're telling me podcasting can be as seamless as scrolling through a Mario level?
Absolutely. And that's why I use Zencaster. It's an all in one podcasting platform that makes recording a breeze. You just log in from your browser, hit record, and you're instantly capturing studio quality audio and up to 4K video with no complicated setups or piles of extra gear.
What if something glitches? Last thing I want is the podcast getting stuck like a bugged Koopa.
That's one of its best features. Zencaster has multi layered backups that keep everything safe, even if your connection drops. You will never lose a take.
And editing? Do we have to patch it together block by block?
No way. Zencaster's post production tools automatically clean up your audio, remove background noise, trim out filler words, balance your sound. They help you put it together. It's like having your own Lakitu cameraman making sure everything runs perfectly.
And once I've got this masterpiece, how do I get it out to the Mushroom Kingdom?
They got you covered there too. Zencaster makes distributing your podcast to platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts as easy as stopping a Goomba. Everything's handled in one place, from recording to publishing.
So you're telling me it's podcasting without warp pipe headaches? How can our listeners power up their own show?
Just go to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, for 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan. If you want the same easy experience that we have to bring this podcast to you week after week, go to Zencaster and share your story.
So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, grab that discount and get rolling. Like Mario chasing down his next power up.
That's absolutely right. Head over to Zencaster, use our offer code memory card lane, and get 30% off your first month.
Now, let's get back to Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yeah. When production finally wrapped, Nintendo's biggest challenge wasn't finishing the game. It was getting it into players' hands. By 1988, the Japanese launch was ready to go, but a shortage of ROM chips caused massive delays in bringing Super Mario Bros. 3 overseas. Nintendo simply couldn't manufacture enough cartridges to meet global demand. That delay stretched into 1989, and with the American market hungry for more Mario, Nintendo needed a way to keep the hype alive. And that's where Hollywood stepped in. Universal Studios was producing a family adventure about competitive gaming, and they approached Nintendo for support. The film, called The Wizard, would feature the company's hardware and software throughout, culminating in a final showdown that revealed Super Mario Bros. 3 to American audiences for the very first time. When the movie premiered in December of 1989, the game still wasn't available in stores, but that final scene where the crowd gasps as the words Super Mario Bros. 3 flash on screen was essentially a 90-minute commercial, the culmination, rather, of a 90-minute commercial. For kids in theaters, it was an unforgettable tease of the next big Mario adventure. Do either of you remember The Wizard?
Not the one that flew around and cast spells at you?
No. No, the movie The Wizard.
Oh.
Oh, so
Long
you
white
No.
beard, had
no.
a staff.
Marlon?
No,
Rob, you've never seen it, right?
No,
You've never
no,
seen it?
no.
Are you
No.
do you know what it is?
I'm assuming it's about a wizard. Oh, is it? It's the one Harry Potter.
Okay, that's exactly it. Ryan, did you ever watch The Wizard?
yeah. He went around with a couple short guys, Frodo, Samwise.
Okay,
Uh,
Oh, I've seen that one.
we're both big
yeah.
Lord of the yeah. I okay. All right, guys. I just Louise. We went from Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings. Okay, well then we don't have anything to talk about.
Well, what do we can talk about the Wizard, but we've never seen it, or at least I've never actually seen it outside of clips here and there.
Clips, right? So you've never
Yeah,
sat through and watched it.
I have not. Have you?
I have. Yeah, I did back when, and I have since then. It is incredibly cheesy.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say, how does it hold up versus your memory?
it not well.
Yeah.
Not well. Almost as I wouldn't say it as bad as the Super Mario Brothers movie, because that's atrocious, we
Oh
both
yeah,
know.
that's
But
the original, not the new one. The new one's great.
correct, the original. Yes,
Right.
the live action original. It's incredibly cheesy, but it's a really it, it's a product of its time. I guess that's the point. It's a product of its time, and it's really funny to watch it because it's so 90s it hurts. Like legitimately it's so 90s it hurts. It doesn't hit the same way anymore because again, like when we saw this when it first came out, it was the first time we got to see Super Mario Bros. 3. But it's a really I think it's a fun little glimpse into what they thought competitive gaming could be at the time and what it kind of was. It reminds me a lot of like the Blockbuster um and the NES championships from early on. And I know that you know the Blockbuster cartridges, so you're not completely unfamiliar with that.
Absolutely.
But it's certainly it's certainly a funny little look because it's not what competitive gaming became. Competitive gaming became something bigger than we ever thought of at the time. I don't know. It's a product of its time, for sure. 2 months after the movie came out in February of 1990, Super Mario Bros. 3 finally landed in North America, and the response was absolutely overwhelming. Stores could not keep it on shelves. Within weeks, it became the NES's new gold standard. It sold millions of copies in its first year. Worldwide, it would eventually move over 17 million units, making it the best standalone game ever released for the Nintendo. Combined with its later appearance, as we said in Super Mario All Stars, those numbers would climb even higher. And yeah, critics praised it instantly. Magazines like Electronic Gaming Monthly and Nintendo Power called it one of the most polished and imaginative games ever made. Reviewers highlighted its pacing, variety, and sense of discovery. They really stressed how, as Ryan just put it, every level introduced something new, taught you how to use it, and then, as they put it, threw it away before it ever got stale, which I think is brilliant. Decades later, retrospective reviews still cite Super Mario Bros. 3 as an absolute master class in game design. Would you agree, Ryan, having played it recently?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Just between all the different power ups and it not being afraid to just, we've explored it. We're not going to have this power up overstay its welcome. Um, Move on. And, you know, you think about some of the iconic, what I call the twin terrors of the game, the sun, and in that's world what 2,
Two, the
and
desert. Yep.
the very next world, the water world, you've got that enormous fish
Yep.
that is just ate so many of my lives.
I know. I know.
That's yeah. The fish is the worst, and even late into the game, between all of the the airships and some of the kind of iconic levels later in the game that you know I've played the game a lot, but most of that's been worlds 1, 2, 3. Maybe the back half of the game is still holds up.
Did you played through the entire thing from beginning to end?
Yes.
So, desert, water, giant, sky, ice. I gotta look it up. I can't remember 7. Pipeland. I forgot about Pipeland, the maze. And then Darkland,
Right.
which is Koopa's castle. 8 worlds.
That's right.
Yep, yep, yep. When Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, it didn't just dominate store shelves in terms of video games. It absolutely took over pop culture. Nintendo was realistically already a household name by 1990, but Super Mario Bros. 3 genuinely turned that recognition into a full blown marketing empire. Nintendo launched one of the largest advertising campaigns in its history at the time, spending, I mean, probably, maybe even now, they spent over $25 million on promotions in 1990.
Wow.
Commercials showed kids shouting Mario in unison until their faces formed a giant globe, a not so subtle statement about how universal the character had become. And realistically, the merchandising quickly followed, right? You could find Mario 3 lunchboxes, bed sheets, trading cards, Halloween costumes. McDonald's rolled out a Happy Meal toy line featuring the Super Leaf and Raccoon Mario, while Mario school supplies and sticker sets that I definitely had filled store aisles. I remember a little pencil box that I had that was Mario. Nintendo even licensed a short lived breakfast cereal. Ryan, do you remember the Nintendo cereal system?
I did not, but now I want to know more.
It wasn't much to it. There was two different serials. One was themed around Mario Brothers, and one was themed around The Legend of Zelda.
Zelda. Yeah, that makes sense.
Television got in on it. In September of 1990, The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 debuted as an animated Saturday morning series
Hmm.
produced by Deke Entertainment. The show expanded on the game's world and characters with Bowser and the Koopalings, causing chaos around the Mushroom Kingdom, even venturing into the real world at one point. It only ran for a single season, but it really helped cement the personalities of the Koopalings and gave all of us a new way to experience Mario outside of the video games. And to be fair, the Wizard, which started out as a marketing vehicle, really became part of that legacy. You know, it was the ultimate spoiler in a movie theater, and it really it perfectly captured the excitement of discovering something new in gaming. What'd you find?
I found out, I remember it, I should say, there's also like a graphic novel or comic as well.
There sure is. I have those somewhere. From cartoons to toys to cereal aisles and commercials, Mario 3 proved that Nintendo's mascot could and did fully cross into mainstream entertainment. Behind the scenes, though, admittedly, Nintendo was already looking ahead. As Mario 3 was launching in North America, engineers at Nintendo were deep into development on what was next, the Super Famicom, which became the SNES here in the United States. Its 16-bit architecture promised bigger worlds, richer color, more powerful sound. Really the next logical step for everything Mario 3 had achieved. In a way, you can kind of look at Mario Brothers 3 as the NES's grand finale. It was the ultimate showcase of what the Nintendo could do. It took the console as far as it could possibly go and then handed the baton over to the Super NES and Super Mario World. It was the bridge between eras, closing out one of gaming's greatest runs in the 8-bit Marios and setting the stage for what would come next. And as we all know from prior episodes, Mar- Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario World remains like one of my favorite games of all time. The essential Mario for me, so I'm not going to complain about handing the baton over in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah. I talked a bit earlier about some of the iconic looks and language of the Mario franchise coming from Mario 3. But that's certainly, evolved with Mario World as well. Obviously Yoshi is a big part of that was not in Mario 3.
I think those two games collectively, Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, gave more to the franchise that has resonated through the years than any others, any others. Because tell me what else has stuck. Like tell me what we know. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but what realistically has stuck from Odyssey? What has stuck from Galaxy? Like what has stuck? What have they given us that we didn't get from these two games? You know?
Rosalina and Luma.
Okay. Well,
Boom.
Flood.
Wow. Rosalie and Luma, yes, are now part of the franchise in kind of the Mario world, right? They're in Mario Kart. They're in Smash Bros to some degree, right?
I'm not going to take that away from either of you in any way, shape, or form. But
Pauline is around, right?
Yep,
She's
yep.
from Odyssey.
again, like when people talk about Mario, no one goes, "No, who's a Pauline fan? Who's a Flood fan?" Like,
Oh,
who?
so many people.
I
Donkey
mean,
Kong.
oh well, that's true. That's.
We were just
I hate
waiting for you to hit
I,
it, Dave.
I
But
hate you
you
for
just
that
wouldn't.
one. I hate you for that one. That was a good one. I don't know. I still think that these two games laid the groundwork for modern Mario more than any other period in the franchise.
Everything else is a riff of or evolution of those two games for sure.
And I mean, even when they brought it to the modern, right, with New Super Mario Brothers, it was I don't feel like they reinvented the wheel. I don't. I don't know. I don't feel.
No, look, yeah, my very much not hot take. The new Super Mario Bros. Games from a level design are great, but from like a game design are just very bland.
Yeah,
And
they
yeah,
didn't reinvent the wheel. They almost simplified it for a new generation. Uh, in a lot of ways, that's how I feel about them. It's fun to play more Mario, but I've never been in love with them because I feel like they just, I don't know, like I said, simplified it. So,
they took the
any,
personality out, but they added, at least for one of them, 4-player co-op, which was madness.
which is about the only thing
Very
that we
true.
can say about them. I mean, what else? What
Yes.
else can you say? What else is? What else?
Okay, they got three. You kind of find the 3 coins. That's the other thing those ones added that are still kind of around. But even that's kind of an evolution of Mario 64's red coins or whatever.
I mean, you found coins in Mario 3 and you found coins in Super Mario World. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It this to me is the golden age for the Mario franchise. I mean, I know it has grown and there are arguably great games in the 3D era, but this is the groundwork. This is the foundation. I think this is where a lot of the modern personality in Mario came from, starting here. So
In Mario 3 introduced the Boo characters, for the first time into the
it
franchise.
did. It sure did. Yeah.
The
Yeah, there's just
uh,
so much that this game gives us so much. Every time
apparent.
it's put on a greatest game of all time list, I think the credit is well deserved, for sure.
Do you know where the personality of the Boos comes from?
Mm-mm.
This is it's apparently based on the personality of the wife of Takashi Tezuka.
I think I've heard that one before. I
Yeah,
think we talked about that in one of the other other ones. That's funny. Yeah, I'm
very
pretty sure
shy
we.
person with an explosive temper. It's like, yep,
Yep.
that's about right.
Yeah, I think we covered that, if I remember correctly, in the Mario World episode, which cracked me up when I found that. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. So,
Wonder
um,
if she loves it.
nah, who knows? Who knows?
Wouldn't want to ask her.
You can still play these games. Super Mario All Stars is out there, which is what Super Mario All Stars Limited Edition on what's the latest one? It's on the NES Classics. It's on Nintendo Switch Online.
It is on Nintendo Switch Online. It was on the NES Classic device, a hardware device that. When did
Mm-hmm.
that come out? Late 2010s,
20
17, maybe
2017.
18.
Yeah, you're right in there. 2016, 2016 actually.
Okay.
So lots of ways to play it. Easy to
Go
play
buy
it.
an NES.
Go buy an NES. Play it old school.
Now, Dave, did you play the game, or you too, Rob? Did you play it also on the Super Nintendo as part of the All Stars?
Yes, I would have. Yes.
I did not, only the
Because
original.
that one would have had this kind of new coat of paint on it where the graphics are different.
Really,
um, and that was different.
I don't know if I remember that. To be totally honest with you,
I could be hallucinating, but I don't
no.
think I am.
Well, well, well.
We actually haven't been here. This has all been imagination.
It says Super Mario 3 was remade and included in All Stars with updated graphics and sound. You are not hallucinating.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Let's see. Sprites were recolored to closer resemble official artwork. The sides of the screen are drawn properly. The blue of Mario and Luigi's overalls is now seen in all sprites, not just the larger sprites of the Spade minigame. Wow, there is a ton of changes. I'm on the Mario Wiki, like official Mario Wiki. Yeah, they did a lot. They did a lot. Good memory. I didn't remember that at all.
It's not the one that's in our brain. Yeah.
Definitely not. The original is still in my brain. So awesome. Well, if you'd like to explore more of Mario's journey, we've covered his adventures across several episodes. You can jump ahead to the 16-bit era with Super Mario World in episode 65, return to the game that started it all with Super Mario Brothers in episode 159, leap into 3D with Super Mario Bros. 64 in episode 200, or even take a detour into the infamous Hotel Mario in episode 84. You can, of course, find all these episodes anywhere you listen to your podcast or by going to our website at www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can you find on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episode topics, get an idea of what we are going to be talking about. You can get access to our Discord where you can come chat with Dave and I, maybe find something that we did wrong with one of our episodes, or maybe just give us some helpful criticism that we can push forward for the next episode. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad-free and unedited versions of our episodes. And you can find links to our social media. I'm on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong, and as we know, Ryan avoids social media like the plague.
You'll never find me.
Which is kind of sad because you have a very appropriate screen name for this podcast. So
I wouldn't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly. Each week, we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a person, a technology, a console. We've even covered places before. We'll tell you each story. We hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. When we sit down every week to research new topics, we get excited when we find new things to share with you. It's a fantastic cycle of teaching and learning, learning and teaching. And in celebration of said cycle, we like to talk about our takeaways each week. So, Ryan, special guest, what did you learn today?
Two things that I did not know. I did not know about the chain chomp being inspired by Miyamoto's childhood. Yeah, that's a fascinating insight, and you could imagine, I mean that could be presumably quite a scary event, and that he turns it into this creative character. And then I also did not know about this isometric point of view, and
That's fascinating to look at that checkerboard floor now in that context.
And then I wondered, did that bleed into like Super Mario RPG, which I know was not developed by Nintendo, or Super Mario 3D Land that also kind of had a not quite isometric, but kind of a 3D view on a 2D game.
For sure. Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, even though it was supposedly obvious, the each one was its own like play, each stage.
I don't think it was that obvious, and I think it's a cool anecdote into its presentation. I mean, I know obvious, but I never thought about it. I never thought about the significance of that in the past. That's
I guess when you
probably
put it
what's
that
new
way,
to
it's
us.
fair. Yeah, it makes sense in hindsight, but yeah, I never really thought of them being like their own each individual stage was a play, and it's really cool when you look at it in that context.
Yeah, for sure. I big fan. Big fan.
What about yourself, Dave? What's your takeaway?
I think I really like that anecdote that every play was its own stage. I think too this really cemented something for me. From 85 to 1990, Nintendo brought us a lot, right? The Super Mario Brothers trio, like I, I it's hard. I had to really wrap my head around it. Why I started in 1980 is this whole decade for Nintendo, right? They went into this decade. Nintendo of America was on the verge of bankruptcy, and Donkey Kong came around. Donkey Kong invented Mario, and then Mario became a series that over the next decade made Nintendo into a global phenomenon. It's amazing when you think about it. And it's hard to fathom nowadays because, for the most part, Rob, you more than us, you grew up in a world where Nintendo just was.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case here. They were a nothing in 1980, and in 1990 they were a global phenomenon. Like I 1985 when Super Mario, you could even argue, don't get me wrong, Donkey Kong put them on the map. But when 1985 rolled around and Super Mario Brothers came out, the NES and Super Mario Brothers came out, they hit it big. And then from 1985 to 1988, 89 here, they made three games that just took over the world. It just took over the world. I don't, for whatever reason, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around. And I love the context of that. I love that timeline. I love that story going from zero to hero in a lot of ways. It's Mario's story in some way, you know. Uh, it's really cool to think about how quickly this happened.
Right. The span from Mario Brothers to Mario 3, even into Mario World, is how many years? Like
I mean,
8
I mean
tops.
they were making Super Mario. They released Super Mario Brothers in 85. They Super Mario Brothers 2 came out in 86. And by the time we got Super Mario Brothers 2, they were already working on this. They were already working on this, which we would eventually get in 88. I mean, that's 3 years. That's 3 years. 3 years and 3 games that would revolutionize everything. That's
And yeah, and just it's crazy to put that in context where the last major 3D Mario game we got was 8 years ago.
right. I and that's
Jeez.
kind of what blows my mind. Also made by 30 people. I mean, Super Mario 3 was 30 people. They just the what games were back when amazes me, and what games are now amazes me in a different way, right? Because we have narrative experiences and cinematic experiences and multiplayer experiences, the likes of which we would never have drawn up at the time. We didn't have the technology to think about it, to be fair.
We still do have some games that are, very well received and made by a very small team.
We
But
sure do. I mean, I'm playing Silk. You and I are both playing Silk Song. Silk Song is how many people? Like three?
it's it's a low number, that's for sure.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up Super Mario Brothers 3. I'm going long anyways. Before I take it out of here, uh, anything, Ryan, I'll start with you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to today's episode?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. Did you know that the speed run, the speed run competition in this game is, it's not as intense as Mario 1 at the moment. But even, this calendar year, there have been new world records set, in
This
terms of
calendar year?
this calendar year. That's
This
right.
calendar year.
Any percent, which includes, all kinds of glitches, etc., is now down to 3 minutes flat.
Must be a new exploit out.
Something. I'm not as familiar with that one as I am with Mario 1, where it's incredibly refined. But yeah, 3 minutes to beat the game, and I must have spent 3 minutes just dying on first level.
That's fair.
Rob, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
I'll just take a quick moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. It means a lot, and we hope you continue to enjoy. And thank you, Ryan, for joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure.
And Dave, thank you too, I guess.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, that brings us to the end of our journey through Super Mario Brothers 3. At its core, this was never just a platformer about jumping, stopping, and collecting coins. It was very much a celebration of creativity under pressure, a moment when Nintendo turned limitation into art. Miyamoto and his team weren't just designing levels, they were performing kind of a magic trick, stretching the NES 8-bit hardware so far that it almost feels infinite. What began as a simple sequel became the NES's grand finale, a game that blended design, technology, and imagination in perfect harmony. It literally redefines what players expected from Mario, and in doing so, very much redefined what video games could be. Every suit, every secret, every world, every airship was proof that innovation did not require new hardware, it required new ideas. In the end, Super Mario Bros. 3 stands as more than a milestone. It's a reminder of how joy, precision, and play can shape an entire generation. It carried Nintendo from the fading glow of the NES and passed the baton into the dawn of the 16-bit era, showing the world that even in 8 bits there was room to dream. So while technology marched forward, the magic of Super Mario Bros. 3 never fades, because for so many of us, that first leap into the sky with a raccoon tail wasn't just a power up. It was a promise that video games could take us anywhere. Next week, we are packing away our Tanooki suits from Super Mario Bros. 3 and flipping through the pages of gaming history with the Electronic Games magazine. Debuted in 1981, this groundbreaking publication was the first to celebrate and critique the world of video games, providing a platform for players to connect with a rapidly evolving industry. From reviews to cultural insights, Electronic Games set the standard for gaming journalism and legitimized gaming as a cultural force. So join us as we explore the publication's legacy and impact on next week's nostalgic trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Skibidi-bop-bop-bop-doo-wop.
Wow.